Hey guys, Bolt here, and this time we're kind of doing something a little different. I've done something similar to this before, but basically, it's been announced that 2026 Christmas, we're gonna have a special for Doctor Who. Um, so after Disney kind of just gave up on Doctor Who, um, they have to trying to figure out what to do with it in the future. So I kind of wanted to have an idea of what they could do. So basically, it's gonna be a quick. It's gonna be less than a few pages, and then I have another one to kind of add to it a little bit. But anyways, he just kind of my idea. Of course, I'm gonna say this right off the bat that this is a what if everything aligned? What if everything in the world was perfect and we got everything we wanted in this special? So this is very unrealistic, but I would like to see this come to some kind of fruition with this next special. I know it's probably gonna suck versus this vision, but let's try it. So this is uniting the. So I'm gonna make this special into two parts. Part one is uniting of the ways, a callback to parting of the ways. Um, so this first part I broke into parts, kind of similar to your classics, story setup. So the intro is that the 14th Doctor is with the Noble family, coming from a vacation from the TARDIS. Um, they find a distress call from 15's TARDIS. Uh, and thanks to 15's last outing, it's figured out that there is a hole in reality. And let's see here. And following the protocol, 15's TARDIS has returned to Earth with Rose Tyler in it. The exposition is that 14 and Rose get caught up. There are some small dialogue with Donna and Rose. I did like to add that Rose gets to kind of meet. I think it's Rose is um, the daughter of Donna. Um, so I like to have them interact a little bit. 14 learns that 15 is now 16 and has swapped with Rose and is now residing in the Doomsday universe. So 14 takes notice that the TARDIS has recognized Rose and brought her to him. This is trying to show that the TARDIS, there was that one short with Clara, where Clara was getting messed with by the TARDIS. This is kind of saying that the TARDIS recognizes Rose and was immediately like, 14 needs to see her now. Need to bring her back to him. We also run into Unit, which we get to see Kate as well. We get a recap of what happened with Wishworld, what happened to 15. We do get a slight meeting of Belinda, but it's kind of very quick to kind of get into what is happening. They investigate to discover that everything that's kind of going funky and kind of why everything's kind of falling apart, even though there is a hole in reality, but there's other stuff going on. And it's realized that the trickster has returned thanks to that hole in reality. The rising action is that the trickster is now the last pantheon. So most of the 2 seasons we got with Shooty was getting small little sprinkles of the pantheons or the gods that come after the Toymaker, and the trickster is one of them. So I like him to be the very final one because he is a classic in my terms. He's been lingering in the shadows since the Toymaker. So he's kind of his presence have been around, but now that hole in reality has came, he's able to get through and actually come physically. He's been plotting to ruin the Doctor's the 15's new healthy mentality. With the return of the Ronnie, Omega, Sutek, and also guiding the TARDIS to midnight. The biggest news is that he was successful in the death of Sarah Jane Smith. So, real quick, the 2 points I mentioned here. So back in the 3-part specials for the 40th, I think, no, it was the 60th anniversary. We did get that 15 was supposed to be a happier, healthier, a doctor who's been through therapy, basically. But we did not get that. That's why a lot of people are complaining about Ncuti's doctor. I want to give it a reasoning where it's just like an old villain is coming to mess with him again. I also kind of I didn't like this that they're like, yes, the actor for Sarah Jane Smith is dead, but they could have just said, hey, Sarah Jane's doing this, but no, they said she had died between Ncuti and David's doctors. So it's kind of like, this kind of gives a reasoning. And in the Sarah Jane adventures, this Trickster does show up, and he knows how valuable Sarah Jane is alive. Because she is, by the 10th Doctor's words, has been known to do so much more in the future. So it's sad that now she's gone, but yet it is also saying that this affects history going on. Now that there is no Sarah Jane Smith, that means a lot more things and more threats are going to come because she's not around no more. So that means the Doctor really does need to interact a lot more than just be semi-retired. Going into the climax, 14 goes around recruiting all of the his old companions when he was 10. Captain Jack, him and the Wood people. We get Jackie and Mickey. I'd really like 14 to react to them being married because we only had him kind of do like a slight nod when he was regenerating. And then all the there are gonna be adults now, but the group that was with Sarah Jane would have been nice. And then of course the Tyler family. Now that there is a way in between the universes, it would be nice to catch back up with, what is her name? Rose's mother and father. They're, of course, going to try to confront the Trickster. Very Sound of the Drums, Stolen Earth-like. Because it's kind of like everyone came together. 1 second. Alright. So, in Sound of Drums, there's Jackie running around the world. With Stolen Earth, it's like everyone comes together to try to help the Doctor beat the threat. But because the Trickster is a pantheon and a god, it fails. This making him be able to spread chaos within all of time. So the falling action is unit knowing that they're overwhelmed. They go and contact all the past companions. That way they can get as many people that can handle this as much as possible. And then of course 14, knowing that he can't really try to fracture that much of the timeline, he goes into the hole in reality and explores the multiverse and finds that he comes across a lot of his old faces, but in different realities where those doctors get to live. So both when 15 is regenerated into, they do bi-generation. But the way RDT mentioned it is that each of the doctors has a chance, like, instead of them dying and regenerating, they were to, like, there's a timeline where they would continue as that face. And that's what it kind of is like, but instead of them just not regenerating, it's certain things in their history changed so that they're still the face that they are. The first Doctor chose not to regenerate, so he dies out. No more Doctor after him, but he never had Twice Upon a Time, so he never meets the 12th Doctor to kind of make him go that way to become the second. 2 to 8, they just kind of are able to dodge their initial reasoning for dying and regenerating, which is pretty easy because it's like all 8 had to do was get Cass in the TARDIS to leave. 2, it just the Time Lords didn't have to punish him. Like they could have just sent him to Earth and not made him regenerate. There's a lot of things that could have gone right in a lot of their situations to avoid regeneration. War is just time locked. No matter what reality, him being in the Time War, you can't go into that. So War is still locked away. Not to mention, no matter what, you can't get John Hurt. 9, in the Parting of the Ways, instead of him taking upon himself to save Rose, he ends up not being able to save her, which means he's kind of grieving on top of his like Time War PTSD. 12, he's kind of very 11-esque. So 11, when he lost the pawns, he went into solitude. This is what 12 did when he lost Clara. And then 13, to kind of avoid her death, I think she allied with the Master in her timeline would have been best for her explanation. And the plan is for each of the Doctors to take their like modern era companions and go into the timelines that the Trickster is messing with to kind of attack on multiple fronts. Let's see here. So while like all the other Doctors are dealing with their normal companions, I wanted 9, 14, and Rose to go together. That way, it's kind of like you have Tennant and Elkiston dealing with Rose, who's kind of like their middle companion. That way, it's kind of like there's a lot more emotional, not turmoil, but it's like they're dealing with stuff as that group is together. Let's see here. And then, of course, 11 does show up. It's just Smith had a little too much, like he was the Doctor at the time of the 50th. But it kind of makes sense that, like, since he had so much time and so much story in that time period, I think 11, it's best that he shows up and he's willing to go and search for the 16th. So he's kind of just pops up, shows that he exists in the story, and goes to get the Doctor back, our newer Doctor. But a big thing that you can probably notice is that he just doesn't, unlike all the other Doctors, to kind of understand how they dodge their regeneration. 11 doesn't go into it, or explains where he is in his life. So it's kind of a mystery of what happened with 11. Going into part 2, a way of new life, a new way of life. The first Doctor takes Ian and Barbara to solve puzzles, very Toymaker-esque. The second takes Jamie to face the Yeti, a very, fantasy element. 3 takes Joe to face the Master. That way it's a callback to when the Master first showed up. 4 and Ramona go to Logopolis. 5 and Tegan go to to face a legion of Cybermen. 6 and Mel stunlock Weeping Angels from coming and taking all these with all this time going out of whack. It's a huge energy source for the Weeping Angels. Seven and Ace go and fight some Sartarans. Eight and the movie companions we don't get to see. They try to stop a war with the Zygons. 12 and Clara. Clara is able to be found by 14 and brought into the fold. Um, I forgot who the immortal is that she's exploring with, like she's adventuring with. But I think at this time it's Clara's like nearing the end of her run around before she goes facing her death with the Raven. I think her actually getting to kind of resolve with the 12th would be nice. And I'd like them to kind of return to one of their classic series with Robin Hood. 13 and her group, I'd like for them to kind of like actually have their moments to explain one another and their actions. Because 13 to me was one of the weakest doctors in modern history. She really didn't feel like the doctor, not to mention she turned away from like being this emotionally available doctor to kind of be like, we're here for the adventures and nothing else. You don't need to know anything about me. I'd like for them to make a connection. True to classic Doctor Who, I'd like them to kind of go around finding historical figures that the Trickster is targeting to kind of like mess with history. I'd like that to be like the thing, because we've always had that with like Shakespeare. We had Charles Dickens. We had Queen Elizabeth. You know, it'd be nice to have that classic idea of historical figure comes in. And then I want 14, Rose, and 9 to kind of recreate Parting of the Ways. Not only are they dealing with their emotions, but they're also going to be dealing with the Dalek Emperor. And then after they're able to finally beat the Trickster, solve all these other side quests, I would like them to kind of be sent, like all these other doctors from the multiverse are able to be sent off with their companions, by their companions. That way it's kind of like, it's a last goodbye to those doctors, a last goodbye to those companions. And then, of course, you got to throw some catchphrases like fantastic, Alon-Z. Of course, throw a bunch of references. I don't know if there's too many more of the questions unanswered. I'd really like them to kind of solve a lot of that here. And then one of my favorite things is I would like the companions to actually react to certain doctors and the way they are. Like, it'd be funny to see, like, the older Doctor companions react to some of the more younger Doctor companions. Well, the more younger Doctors, like 8 and 10. Well, now 14. My biggest things, it would be hilarious, kind of like how Ian reacted. It'd be funny for them, and Jack. But it would be funny to see a lot of the companions' reactions to 13. And then I would say 11 kind of comes back. He's like has the shortest time of them all. He comes back, says 16 already found the TARDIS and is off going on their adventures. So it's kind of like 11 really doesn't get a big focus. 14, Rose, they get to have a moment of peace and are able to kind of like unload everything. Like, it would be nice to finally get into some deep stuff like, hey, how come, you get your face back? I thought you could never return to a face via what 9 said. Well, what 10 said when he first regenerated. And then, of course, the biggest thing is, because Rose is staying, what happened to Meta 10. And it's revealed that Meta 10 passed away a few months ago due to what happened with Donna. So it turns out that Meta 10 is Time Lord and human. The Time Lord of him kept him alive long enough for these last few years. Last quite a bit years. Um, but when it comes to the human side, it couldn't handle all the knowledge and the situation with the body. Um, but Mediton did not leave her with nothing because she got pregnant and had a baby girl. Um, and it's kind of revealed that 14 knows a little bit more about this girl than he lets on, and they travel to Ruby. And it's turned out that the baby girl of Rose and Mediton is baby Ruby. I know it's kind of a weird. You're gonna have to retcon a few things from the Ruby era, but it's just like it makes so much sense. This mystery that turned out to be nothing in the end of season 1. Oh no, you're the daughter of the Doctor and Rose Tyler, and you've been left that way. You know, you end up with the 15th. And because of the history, it's kind of like you can't keep messing with stuff, so they have to do what his history says, and let's go with baby Ruby. But because they have adult Ruby, they just go and make their three-way adult. It's kind of weird. They have a relationship with the adult Ruby. They got to kind of like figure a way out how to deal with the trauma of leaving a child of their own for history. But she understands because she's been with the Doctor. She understands how timelines are very, like, you got to be very careful with it. So after that, I think 14 is able to kind of like have a fully fulfilled life. A lot of his time is spent adventuring, of course. That way he can age a lot faster because it was like thousands of years before 11 showed his age. I think him running around, getting his time to be on his own, but this giving him a kind of similar time frame for the aging processes of Ruby and Rose. That way, by the time he is old enough to regenerate, they are just only a few years after, before him dying. That way, 14 feels like he's lived a full humanish life. That way, he moves on to his version of 15, where he can live a life without any trauma. He's got everything he's needed. Let's see here. So the very end, though, I kind of wanted a little twist end. I wanted it to turn out that 11 did not indeed find 16 during that whole event. He just went and hid in a corner, and then he turns over to the Doomsday dimension universe, finds 16 in the 15 attire. We do not get a face reveal. And it's revealed 11 is the Valyard, a classic Doctor Who villain who is the dark side of the Doctor. And I believe they say that it's between 10 and 11 or 11 and 12. So it's kind of like the idea of instead of making Meta 10, they actually do become 11. And that way 11 does have an extra regeneration to go. I think because in an interview, Matt Smith wanted it to become the Master, but I think him being the Valyard is a lot more interesting. Not to mention, I think we've had enough of the Master. But basically, why I wanted it to end like this, all your companions, all your doctors have their emotional bonding. They have explanations of what happened during their eras. 14 and Rose get to live their happy life. Ruby gets a whole her story is not for nothing, so that's nice. And then having 9 actually have a time to shine. getting a good farewell. It's nice to kind of also help out those doctors from other universes that feel grief from their own decisions. Um, and then it's also just nice to kind of say that the main Doctor Who story has kind of a ribbon on it, and also it kind of gives us a setup for Tom Baker during the 50th anniversary coming back, where it's just like him as a future incarnation of 14 going on to regenerate as just a common citizen would be perfect. And then this ending with 11 being the Valyard and 16 being stuck in the Doomsday universe, I think is perfect because this means in the Doomsday universe, I'm gonna say that the Doctor just never existed, which means because there's no Doctor, the Gallifreyans never find them, learn about regeneration, be able to make themselves such a high empire and make them the Time Lords. While Gallifrey does exist, it's an ancient society, more or less, and at best it's kind of like an advanced future human society, I'd say. They don't have mastery of time or anything. They're just a normal civilization that has slightly higher intelligence, just because they're so old. But I think it's best to have the Doctor not exist. That way, a lot of other things, basically in this universe, you can explore the differences, and not to mention you have the Valyard who can be your master for a time being. Basically, he can regenerate very early on out of Matt Smith. If Matt Smith wants to move on, you can get someone else to play the Valyard if you have an extra regeneration. And then have very similar things to the Master in the movies, and like some of the other later parts of the classic, where he wants to, the Valyard wants to steal the Doctor's regenerations. That way, he cannot continue living. Because unlike our modern Doctor, he doesn't. The Valyard doesn't know he has an elongated life past. What we know is from the other like limited Time Lords, so they only get like 12 regenerations. The Doctor's kind of like a god of life. So this is a pretty nice thing to kind of like put a bow on our Doctor Who story, but be able to continue it, but with a brand new universe. Everything's brand new. Like, yes, you can call back to things, kind of like, hey, well, you remember this situation in the other universe? Well, it's different here because there's no Doctor, or certain events or people were not here to deal with this. And then because there's no Doctor, a lot of like things have been conquered, or there's constant battling. So being able to have the Doctor come in and be the hero again is very nice. Moving on real quick, I'd like to also mention a idea. Instead of just jumping right back into the Doctor Who main series, I think they can kind of do a small mini series. I like to call the mini faces of the Doctor, where there is that previous to William Hartnell era, or like the Ruth Doctor existed. I think it's perfect to have a mini series of like every single episode is a very Scooby-Doo mystery-esque, where you have a group of people, the Doctor is a part of this group of people, but it's a different face every single time, and you kind of gotta guess as you go which of these people are the Doctor. That way we get different personalities of the Doctor, we get different faces. The Doctor isn't always the main focus. It would be nice to also get away from the like, hey, finally the Doctor did have a ginger regeneration. And then, of course, I'd like the last two episodes of that miniseries to be the Ruth Doctor. That way we just get done with everything of the main continuity. Like, yes, if you come back for the Doctor Who as a new restart point, that history does still exist in the character, but it's going to be mostly used as reference material for like jokes or like a nice little nod to past Doctor Who. it will not be the main focus anymore. Or like a lot of the previously like developed characters with the Doctor no longer exist in this universe. I think the only person I would maybe say is maybe Tony Tyler or some of the other people who were left in this Doomsday universe from those previous episodes. They may come back, but else than that, I think it would be great to tie everything off in the main universe and then move to a new continuity where the Doctor is just dealing with a separate world where he needs to make a change. And this makes him be able to explore and experience a whole new universe. That way he can kind of gain back his adventurous sense by himself, have some new companions. Basically, I'm getting tired of the nostalgia traps. It is nice to see 14 come back, but I think him having this last hoorah with all these classic Doctors is perfect. And now that there's no timeline with no past Doctors, you can't call upon a multi-Doctor story unless you race through a bunch of regenerations so that, 16 comes back to see 20, But anyways, I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.